Yo guys, welcome back to my channel, and today, for the last time, we are gonna cover prestige abilities again. So this time around, I really want to cover how viable some of these prestige abilities are, because I didn't really go through that in the previous videos. I only mostly showcase how to use them and how to activate them. So in here, we're gonna evaluate each of the prestige abilities for each of the characters and how good they are really in practice. Now I just want to say that I've tested some of them, but of course I don't have them at max ability, so I can't really fully understand how good they are yet. So this is still a very premature evaluation, but I think it's much better than my first initial impressions, so do keep that in mind. So I suppose we're just gonna go straight into the first one, Annie's. Now Annie's is simply a damage boost, and damage boost is always a nice thing. It's never a bad thing to get more damage boost. I do say that this only applies to the offensive Annies, so defensive Annies like Model Leader really don't need a prestige ability like this because it doesn't really do much for her. So if you have multiple Model Leaders, please don't combine them into one. Just keep both of them there, put both of them in your Rift defense, and your opponent will go crazy. Now I have to mention though that Timeless Hero has a really weird thing with her charge rate because of Timeless Hero's ability to have infinite star power. If you activate it and you get that infinite star power, you're not actually filling up her prestige ability at all because it's not spent, it's infinite. So do keep that in mind if you're using Timeless Hero, and you know how you usually play her. You might have to play her slightly differently if you want to make use of her prestige ability. But regardless, Annie's prestige ability is pretty standard. It's a simple damage boost. It's always nice to have. I think it's pretty decent. Then we have Beowulf. Beowulf is also yet another damage boost, which is always nice to have, as mentioned before. Now what's great about Beowulf is that it benefits greatly for variants that already relies on hype mode to activate their signature abilities. So things like Snakebite, Weekend Warrior, Hype Man, they all benefit from this prestige ability because it's just a natural progression to activating their signature ability, and you gain more damage because of that. Now Beowulf isn't really good in defense anyway, so I don't think it's worth mentioning this prestige ability in defense, so I'm just gonna skip that for now. But your Beowulfs, if you have multiple of them, feel free to combine them for a prestige ability because a damage boost is always needed. It's always nice, and it helps the lower variants, the bronze and silver variants, to deal damage against the higher tier ones. So really nice one. It's also really decent, pretty good. So next is Big Ben's prestige ability, and I think it's one of the really weaker ones for two reasons. The first one is the activation effect itself. It only gives your Big Ben dash attacks a 60% chance to be unblockable. Now, what you can do is that you can dash attack, and if it misses and it's blocked by the opponent, you can easily move back and go for another dash attack. Now I've tried it, and about the second or third try, there's a really high chance for you to inflict that unblockable hit so you can start your combos. But is there really a point for that when you can just block and wait for an opening? Or Big Ben has access to noise cancel, so you can use that and bait the opponent to inflict stun, and that could be used for an opening. What I'm trying to say is that I don't think it's worth the cost, the resources to get this prestige ability just for an unblockable dash attack. It feels really weak. The second, of course, is the charge rate. It charges 17% per 10th combo hit, so you really need 60 combo hits to really fully charge this prestige ability. And because it needs 60 combo hits, it's really only usable when you're playing Big Ben on the offense. When you're fighting against a defensive Big Ben, it's very rare for the AI to get through 60 combo hits unless you allow them to kill you, or if they use a level 3 blockbuster. At that point, you're pretty much dead anyway. And Big Ben does have its own issues on defense, which doesn't make it one of the best. So with that aside, we're just gonna focus on the offense here. Offensive Big Bans are very few in number. There's Epic Sax, Vintage Virtuoso, which has Guard Break by the way, Megasonic, and Beatbox. Beatbox definitely do not need this ability because he has a very easy way to gain a level 3 blockbuster. Vintage Virtuoso can inflict Guard Break, which makes all hits unblockable for like a lower chance. It doesn't have to be dash attacks. So he also may not really need this prestige ability. Mega Sonic has a really funny signature ability with the Enrage. And if you land an unblockable dash attack, your 5 stacks of Enrage is suddenly gone. With Epic Sax is probably your best bet for this prestige ability, but again, you can still use Noise Cancel to bait the opponent. You can simply just block and wait for an opening until you attack. So there's really very little point in investing in combining 2 Epic Saxes for this prestige ability. With that said, that is an option if you just want the border, but Big Gen's prestige ability is one of the weaker ones and I think needs a really big buff or a rework. Next is Cerebella, and Cerebella is again another damage increase. There's nothing much to say about Cerebella's prestige ability. Cerebella just does what Cerebella does, which is Merry Gorillas, Diamond Drops, Diamonds Are Forever, and this just makes sure that she deals tons of more damage the first time you use Cerebella against an opponent. It's definitely better than Big Bands and it has uses. Yeah, this is one of the prestige abilities that I think is pretty good, just for that extra damage boost. Again, damage boost is never a bad thing, so if you have multiple variants of Cerebellas, feel free to mix them up and invest in that prestige ability. Then we have Double, which is again another damage increase, which is again always nice. However, she relies on Transmutation to actually charge it and gain that damage boost. Only 2 variants I feel like really benefit from this prestige ability, and that's Jawbreaker and Rainbow Blight, because both of them have signature abilities that actually wants them to transmute a lot. So this is a very nice synergistic point just to get that extra damage bonus. The other variants don't really need it. Whether or not you invest in a prestige ability for Double really depends on how you use them. Some Double variants don't really need it. For example, Immoral Fiber is a defensive one. She doesn't really need it because her purpose is to die anyway. And then there's variants like Nonsense, for example. She's only really good against Frost Armor or Water Element variants. So you don't really want to change her element because her naturally Air element actually helps with the Chaos Marquee ability against those water variants. So those are just 2 examples of variants that I wouldn't invest prestige abilities on. But yeah, it really depends on how you play Double. If you transmute a lot, then just get the prestige ability because it amplifies your damage bonus really fast. Then we have Eliza's. Now upon first glance, Eliza sounds pretty crazy because of her ability to remove an opponent's buff. However, I found that the opponent is usually dead before I get to use the prestige ability, which is really funny. I think this is a prestige ability that looks good on paper, but then you just realize that Eliza already has Chaos Banish to remove the opponent's buff, so you don't actually need it as much. I gotta say though that the only variant that I feel really benefits from this is Mummy Dearest. Like, no joke, Mummy Dearest actually really likes this prestige ability. The other Eliza variants feel like they don't actually need it. It doesn't give them damage boost, it only gives them a way to remove the opponent buff, which all Eliza variants can already do with Chaos Banish. And gaining 5 health is, I guess, nice, but is it really that useful? I don't know, maybe in the future we'll get another Sekhmet based blockbuster that could actually be really good with this. But so far this has been a bit, I don't want to say underwhelming, but I haven't found a good use for this prestige ability outside of Mummy Dearest. Like, if you just play Eliza normally with the Sekhmet loop, the blockbusters, uppercut with the stun, you found yourself killing the opponent faster than you can activate the prestige ability. But so far, it has been on the weaker side surprisingly. It just takes a bit too long to activate it. Then we have Filia's, and Filia's I think is also a weak one, similar to Big Bang. Now, activating it is really easy. You just need to attack the opponent while they're attacking, so that's really easy. It's a no-brainer. Just playing normally will naturally charge you this prestige ability. However, the activation effect is kind of weak. Filia evades all projectiles while dashing. How common do you need that ability? How common are projectiles that you need to be able to evade them all while dashing? What's the problem with just blocking the projectiles? We don't really have a lot of Filia variants that gains benefits from evade. I think the only two variants that gain it is like Windswept and Idle Threat. Even then, there's really very little point in evading projectiles. And then there's a 100% chance to inflict Deathmark, which is kind of nice. However, Filia isn't known to deal tons of damage. You know, don't count the diamond variants, put the diamond variants on the side. But like the normal Filia variants like the bronze, silver, gold, most of them kind of just rely on Filia's permanent bleed to actually deal damage. And the Deathmark, while nice, requires you to also invest in crit rate to really make use of it. So there's like a lot of additional hoops you have to go through before you can actually make use of this prestige ability to the fullest. And even then, I don't think it's all that impressive. I'm really happy if someone can prove me wrong, but I don't think it's actually that impressive at all. Then we have Fukuas. I have to say, with the way I play Fukua, using a lot of Inevitable Snuggle and a lot of unblockable Loves of Love, I haven't found like a really good reason to use Fukua's prestige ability. Usually just by using unblockable Loves of Love and Inevitable Snuggle as a command grab, I could already deal tons of damage and be super aggressive, and the opponent is usually dead anyway. But it is a nice effect when you do use it. I think Fukua's prestige ability is nothing new, nothing too fancy. Although I do feel like this could be really scary for a defensive Fukua. Especially things like Splitting Image. I think that's where this prestige ability shines the most as a defensive prestige ability. Because it activates even when your opponent uses a blockbuster. And Splitting Image is very unlikely for you to be able to kill her in like just 1 or 2 blockbusters. Especially a fully maxed out one. Aside from that though, I don't know. It doesn't feel like something you really need to focus on. So don't focus too much on Fukua's prestige ability. I don't think it's anything crazy, but again, it's not bad per se. It's kind of more on the decent side. It's just a little nice improvement to her overall kit, which is already pretty strong anyway. She has Miasma, she has unblockable drains, she has command grabs, she has healing. She's got a lot of things in her kit that makes her a really good character on her own. So she doesn't really need this prestige ability. You are free to like ignore this completely, honestly. Then we have Misfortunes. Misfortunes, the charge rate is absolutely insane. It's really easy to activate her prestige ability. Now the activation effect is actually quite powerful as well. She gains evasion and inflicts guard break for 5 seconds each every 5 seconds. This is crazy in defense. If you ever get the chance to fight a Misfortune and you didn't kill her on time, you're pretty much dead. Especially if they get to use a prestige ability. That's crazy. And on the offense, if you use a Misfortune and you can do Headless, this is also really good. I think this is actually one of the better prestige abilities out of the rest. I just don't play Misfortune or her Headless mode to know a lot about it, but it definitely is promising. And if you don't play Headless, it might not be as good for you, but being able to inflict guard break is really nice. See, this is really sad for Big Ben. Big Ben only gains unblockable hits on his dash attack. Misfortune gains the ability to inflict guard break, which makes all her hits have a chance to be unblockable. Misfortune is definitely one of the better ones, for sure. Next is Painwheel. And Painwheel, like you've seen Misfortunes and you see Painwheel, and it kind of has the same guard break, but Painwheel has more cost that she only can use it on a blockbuster, but the guard break also lasts slightly longer for 10 seconds. So I've tried Painwheel a bit, and if you have like 60% crit rate, you can charge her prestige ability pretty fast. Now, how useful actually is her prestige ability? I think it's one of the better ones than from what we've seen before. The ability to inflict guard break is actually really nice. Even if the opponent is blocking, you use a death crawl and you inflict guard break, like that will almost always at least hit an opponent, and you can follow that up with an opinion dash to inflict tons of damage. It's really nice. I think people seem to underestimate it, but guard break on a Painwheel is actually pretty crazy. You can do super offensive, play aggressively with Painwheel finally. A lot of other characters usually rely on command grabs for that, to be very aggressive, and Painwheel doesn't not have any command grabs, but the fact that she can now inflict guard break makes up for that by a ton. However, don't do this on Neuromancer. Neuromancer absolutely do not need this prestige ability. Do keep that in mind. Guard break is, funnily enough, does the exact opposite on what Neuromancer wants to do. Aside from that though, the other Painwheel variants will definitely benefit from this. Okay, next is Parasoul's, and Parasoul's prestige ability is pretty powerful, gaining precision every 2 seconds. But here's the thing though, it's only really powerful when it's maxed out at 2 seconds. Anything higher than that is kind of weak and you can kind of forget it. It doesn't really do anything. And you're better off running an Egret Call. So the point of Parasoul's prestige ability is pretty much allowing you to have a Parasoul with access to precision without needing Egret Call in your move slot, which can be very good because you can deal more damage and have more access to blockbusters. It's really funny, but Parasoul's prestige ability seems like an all-in or nothing kind of deal. Like, you really need that precision every 2 seconds to be actually useful. But the charge rate is a joke. Like, it's really fast to fully charge her prestige ability. It's super fast. I guess for new players, if you're watching this, if you don't really have a lot of Parasoul dupes, you can pretty much forget about it and don't really invest on the prestige ability yet, because it's only really useful when you're actually maxed it out at 2 seconds. 2 seconds is where it's crazy. If it's at like, what, 7 seconds, it's kind of weak. Then we have Peacock. So I've tested it, and Peacock's prestige ability charges really fast with Argus Agony. Like, it fills it up completely. The activation effect is really only nice with 2 variants, that is Inkling and Wildcard. And the reason why is those 2 can really spam projectiles as much as they can, and it doesn't matter if the opponent is blocking because Inkling can land an unblockable projectile. Wildcard can land debuffs, which one of them is guard break. It can inflict guard break, which means, again, unblockable projectiles. Outside of those 2 variants though, I don't know if it's worth the prestige ability, because usually you still want to use blockbusters with Peacock, and the special moves is mostly just used like twice, so it may not be that worth. So unless you're using a Peacock that spams tons of projectiles, again, Inkling and Wildcard, you don't really need this prestige ability. It's a nice one though. It makes, like, those 2 variants are silvers, it makes them a bit more powerful because they gain access to like Enrage, Haze, or Precision. Then we have Robo-Fortune. And honestly, I think Robo-Fortune has one of the best prestige abilities, especially for defensive Robo-Fortunes. Overclocked and Blue Screen, for example, benefits so much from this ability, it's actually crazy. Blue Screen especially is nuts with this prestige ability. It's absolutely scary. She charges really fast per buff or debuff. Like, Blue Screen can inflict Power Surge on you. She gains armor every, like, what, 1 second? Like, this charges out super fast, and if she ever gets the chance to activate her prestige ability, she's reflecting tons of damage, because also she has frost armor, which is crazy. Overclock gains buffs pretty easily as well, so that's really nice. Outside of those 2, I can't really think of any other Robo-Fortunes that really benefit from it. X-Bot can benefit from it somewhat, but you don't really need it that much. It's better for you to have like 2 X-Bots and just use them offensively, instead of combining both as one, because X-Bot is a premier offense unit. Like, having multiple X-Bots is much better than just having one X-Bot that's like maxed out with prestige ability. The other variants I don't feel like will benefit as much because they don't gain buff or inflict debuffs that much, especially the offensive ones. Offensive Robo-Fortunes have a lot of ways to like gain precision. Most of them do gain precision really easily, so you don't really need the activation effect. The reflect damage is kind of nice, but again, you're on the offense. You don't really gain anything from being able to reflect damage back to the opponent. So bottom line, it's a nice ability, but only Blue Screen, I think, can make use of it really well. other Robo-Fortunes don't feel like they need it that much. And then we have Squigly with the ability to burn a dead body. I haven't found a reason to use this prestige ability yet, but I gotta say though, being able to gain a dragon charge every 2 seconds for a Squigly is absolutely nuts. Like, it's crazy. This is a really strong prestige ability, and I think it benefits all Squiglys. Maybe not the defensive ones, although that is debatable. But yeah, being able to gain a dragon charge really easily, it's just crazy. It opens up so many combo routes. You can just keep on spamming and looping the opponent and they can't even do anything. It's actually nuts. This is one of the stronger prestige abilities as well, especially for things like Lovecrafted especially, that can inflict a heavy bleed as well. It's absolutely crazy. Really good prestige ability. Lastly, we have Valentine. And honestly, this one has been a bit underwhelming, and Valentine's prestige ability is mostly used for defense. Like, this prestige ability, if you use it offensively, you actually need to purposely get hit first before you can actually like charge it. There's really no reason for you to have a prestige ability for an offensive Valentine. The only exception is for rift battles if you're against like Neuromancer or like Painwheels with Don't Poke the Bear, where you're chipping a lot of damage back just by hitting them normally. That is where I think the prestige ability can really shine on the offense. So things like Dreadlocks, for example, with the reflect damage, that is really useful with this prestige ability. But I think most of where its usefulness comes from is on the defense, especially with the ICU Marquee ability. Now, I haven't fought any defensive Valentine bases with prestige ability, so this remains to be seen whether or not it's powerful or not. But it does have potential, and I think it's a nice prestige ability, don't get me wrong, but it's not as crazy as many people might have thought before. Reviving is nice, but we already have Killjoy for that, and Forbidden Procedures for that. So those are pretty much my current impressions on these prestige ability. The really ones that stood out for me are Squigly, Robo-Fortunes, and Painwheels is pretty nice, Misfortunes is quite nice, and all the damage boosting prestige abilities are overall decent and pretty good, but some others are pretty disappointing, like Filias and Big Bands. And yeah, so hopefully that has been useful for you guys if you were thinking like whether this prestige ability is good or not. These are my thoughts on them. Feel free to comment below if you have like a specific variant you want to ask about, and I'll try my best to answer with the knowledge that I have, which could be limited, and I could be biased, so do keep that in mind. Anyway guys, that's all for me for this video. If you have any other opinions or there are like prestige abilities that you think are good where I got it wrong, please do share it in the comments below, because I'm really happy if I get any of these wrong, especially the ones that I've said are bad, because if there's a way to use these prestige abilities to the maximum potential, then I'm really interested to know how. So that's all for me guys, thank you so much for watching and hope to see you in the next video.